Bada bing, there we are. Right on time for Triple T number 95. Funny part when I was getting it ready for YouTube, again, I typed in 59 first because my mind is still trying to wrap it around the fact that we're almost to triple digit. For those of you joining live on YouTube, hi Mom. And as long as we're discussing YouTube, please do all the good YouTube stuff. Click the subscribe button, ring the bell so that you can see when we're back on air again. Leave comments, and like I like to joke, leave comments and then leave comments on your comments and comment on other people's comments. I just like seeing the comments.
That's so meta.
Yeah, there you go. You can even go meta on your comments. I also have a website, thetswb.com, thetallskinnywhiteboy.com. Yes, that's what it stands for. My name is TJ Zill. I like to refer to myself as a professional problem solver with the disclaimer, no, I don't know everything. I just have a unique way of being able to ask people the right questions to help them, help me, help them find the solutions. And if I don't have the solutions, I have amassed a really cool network of people that I can refer to, pick from, all the above to help find solutions to many challenges. I help people with depression, anxiety, phobias, PTSD. I do corporate coaching. I work with athletes from beginning all the way up to professional level. And that's about this much of this much. So if you want to figure out what else I do, if you have a challenge that you're looking for an answer for, I also conveniently offer a free 30-minute consultation. That is your time, 30 minutes to spend picking my brain, seeing if we're a match. If we are a match, I'll let you know. If we're not a match, I will also let you know and do my best to find the best match for you so we can get the solutions to you as quickly as possible. If you're here for the first time or watching the recording for the first time, and if you're out on YouTube land, feel free to join us live. The first hour, I've got 3 topics for the week that I've been given, downloaded, squirrels brought to me, all the above. We go over those. Second hour is open mic, open platform. So those of you on the call, make sure you've got your questions, your topics ready for the second hour so we can roll right into them. But I also like to start out with anybody got anything cool, awesome to share from the last time we were here 7 days ago?
I mean, I guess a lot of you already heard this, but I did get a new job at work that's going to pay me a little bit more, so I'm very excited about that.
Yay! Cool, cool, cool. And I know somebody else had a busy week. Would you mind sharing, please?
Hi. So Holly, I am so excited for you. So congratulations for that. I hope it is as satisfying and fulfilling as you want it to be. I had a super fun weekend in Chicago at the Mid-America Hypnosis Conference, and I posted my talk on my YouTube channel, and you can find it at DTV Horizons, and it went really, really awesome. Super happy with everything.
Super cool. Very proud of you.
Thank you. Thank you for letting me share.
Fran's got her hand up. What's going on, Fran?
Good morning. Well, it's my good morning.
Yes, it is your good morning.
Just to say that, thank you all for all your support and contributions and helping me with developing my skills. I had the opportunity to use them in a big way at the weekend at a conference, and brokered a meeting between people that were warring and got a really positive outcome. It wasn't perfect, but it was a lot better than the situation began. And a lot of that is to do with the skills that we have learned and you've helped me nurture and develop. And I was a mover and a shaker and got people smiling. They began frowning at the meeting and left smiling. So my job is done. And it's all due to the skills that I've learned with you guys. And just to say, I really appreciate you.
Yay! Thank you for sharing that. That's so cool.
Congratulations, Fran. And it's also from your group too that you created. That's exciting. Wow.
Whoop, 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 whoop. This is so cool. That's why I like this part. It's like, oh, you guys are just out rocking it. Anybody else before we dive into this week's topics? Squirrel just had to deliver something really quick, though. I know that a couple of you have heard this, and goes for Fran as well with basically everybody. Remember, when you are in an environment where people don't know you, that is your opportunity to absolutely be the newest version of you. Take all the downloads, all the things you've learned. These people don't know you. They don't know how you talk. They don't know how you act. They don't know what your personality is. They don't know how much confidence you have or maybe don't have. It's the best place to, quote unquote, fake it till you make it. Be the movie star that you wrote for your script. You can't fail because they don't have anything to judge by. The hardest people to show your new version to, family and friends. They will nitpick. What do you do? Why do you talk like that? What do you do? How dare you change now? You've been the same small little scared person for how many years now? And all of a sudden now you've got confidence? How dare you? What, you think you're going to go out and actually change things? You think you're actually worth making the money that we're not making? Look at us. We don't make that kind of money. Yeah, look at you. You don't make that kind of money. I do now. Thanks for holding me back so long. Well, who said you could negotiate for more? My new tribe. The one that told me I was living too small. Well, when are we going to meet him? Depends on how you act. If you're going to try and tell them that I'm not the person that they allow me to be, it's going to be a while. It'll be a while. which ties right into the first of our topics. And the topics this week: how big is your mountain? The golden rule, and seeing yourself in others. So, how big is your mountain? And this question is one of those fun little tricky ways. It depends on how you mean it, right? A lot of people that know me know that my famous answer for many questions is depends. I don't have enough information. How big is your mountain? Or are you talking about the mountain that I want to climb to get to the better version of me? Really big. If you're talking about the drama that you're trying to put into my life, that's going to depend. And I think we've all been around some version of drama fanatics. Love drama. Oh my goodness. Trust me, I've been around a number of them. And you have to find the ability some way, somehow, to sit back and evaluate, is their mountain truly as big as they're describing it? And how much of it is stepping on your property? And there are some that will be like, well, TJ, you don't know what I'm going through. You're right, I don't. But do you have the ability to step back and take and reevaluate what you're going through? To an ant, their anthill is huge. To a human, it's an anthill. But you look at the Andes Mountains and you're like, but when you compare the Andes Mountains to the depth of the ocean in some areas, apparently there are places in the ocean that if you flipped them around and turn them into mountains, they would make the Andes Mountains look like. And so we have to figure out ways to protect, I would say, our future energies by trying to figure out who put the mountain there, is staring at it and lamenting how big it is versus figuring out the best way to, do I need to climb all the way to the top of it? Can I go around it? Can I go through it? Can I fly over it? Is there any way to shrink it? And if I were to look through my history, through my past, have I dealt with this size of a mountain before? Or did I deal with one that I perceived at the time to be this big? And when I got on the backside and turned around, realized Wasn't quite as big as I thought it was when I was on the other side. I think we've all been there. Listen, even the glory days of school. Oh, test is coming. Oh, I got it. First breakup. Oh, my life is ending. I'm never gonna make it. Oh, they were my everything.
I don't always sound like that, you know?
Did you have a flashback? And how angry you got at your parents when they're like, oh, your boyfriend dumped you? You'll be fine. You don't understand. This is the Andes Mountains and I'm gonna get crushed under it. I'm dying. Why are your parents laughing? They're having flashbacks. Oh yeah, I remember when it was that tragic. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Yep. You'll survive. No, I won't. And as we make it through all of these little things and we get on the backside and now we get to watch the kids have their first tragic breakup, Andes Mountain, all the above, heart ripped out. What do we learn from it when we look back?
Tons. You survived. Time heals.
All those things that our parents told us when we were there and we're like, you just don't understand.
You then also learn hypnosis.
But for some people, we have to understand that some people's level 3 is another person's level 10. And some people's level 10 is another person's level 3. You watch some people go through some stuff and you're just like, how are you even still functioning? Ironically, I got that question when I was a senior in high school from the counselor. Let's just say I had a bad couple of weeks. Without going into too much detail, Mom will verify, right, Mom? Girlfriend dumped me for a less than desirable, and few other things packed on top of that. And I just was like, you know what? I don't think I'm going to go to school today. Tomorrow might not happen either. I just need to go to work. I was working at a mechanic shop at the time. I was a high school senior and showed up at work and my boss was like, what are you doing here? And I said, well, here's what happened in the last couple of days. And he was like, oh, you all right? I said, can I just work? Would that be fine? So I did. And when I went back to school, you know, they're like, well, where have you been? And I said, I knew the principal well, in a good way. Clarify that first. And he was like, noticed you were gone. And I said, yeah, here's what's going on. He was like, whoa, okay, I'm going to have you talk with so-and-so counselor. And I'm like, yeah, okay, whatever. So went into the counselor and he's like, so I hear you're having a rough time. What's going on? And I said, da 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 da. And he's like, oh, okay. How are you still functioning? What most adults would be, yeah. I said, I went to work. I just needed a few days off. I worked on my car, worked out a couple of things. And so they sent me to another psychiatrist. Yes, I said it that way. And if you're a psychiatrist, I'm sorry, but some of you are better than others. And so I'm like, okay. So I go to the psych and he shows up 10 minutes late. He's like, okay, so what's going on? I tell him, he's like, oh, wow, okay, so how are you dealing with it? I'm like, okay, here, da 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 da. He's like, oh, well, I don't have a whole lot to offer you. And I said, oh, so it's free? He was like, oh, no, 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 no. I went, so you're charging me anyway for listening, even though you got nothing to, no advice to give me? Well, all right, well, guess I got to bounce. Because I had figured out a way to take that 10 that they all saw as a mountain that they didn't figure out how, and they didn't quite understand how me going to work at a mechanic shop at 17 years old was my therapy. And I made it, right, Mom? Yes. But it also allowed me some of the stuff where bartending, for some reason, I had really good ways of being that bar stool therapist on the other side of the bar, listening to people's challenges, helping reframe them, letting them know they were going to make it. Drinking heavily was not the solution. And then luckily I got into self-improvement and all the other cool things like that. And my mountain changed to something different. What is your mountain? And you start looking at these people that like to climb mountains and all that stuff. And, and some of us are like, you want to climb Everest. You know, people die climbing Everest. Yep, and people die safely on the ground. How do you want to live? What do you want to push yourself to? Comfort zone is a nice, soft place to hang out, but not much grows there. And I've had to evolve some of my tribe because as we know, you are the sum of the 5 people you hang out with the most. And I learned quite a while ago, if you are the smartest person in the room, time to change rooms. Leave them with the best that you have. Hopefully that one of them will rise to the top as you go to join another room and work your way up through the ranks, learn to rise to the top and keep progressing, climbing the mountain, looking for the peak, not freaking out when the fog sets in. Just understanding that you haven't reached the top yet. Sometimes we reach the plateaus, and some people are like, oh, well, walking is much easier here. But what do we know about plateaus on mountains? The other side is either a downslope or you have to start climbing again. Anybody got any ahas, epiphanies, input that want to share on this?
Looks like I have stuff to say, but sorry, I'll jump in. I mean, a lot of stuff is coming to my mind. There's kind of two steps. I'm kind of thinking of it more from the perspective of when you're helping somebody else too, even though obviously we need to look at this in our own lives, but I think it's a lot of us are helping other people and it's much more complicated. Because first of all, you have to determine the difference between perception and reality. And I know there's been tons of times that I thought something was going to be a 10 and it ended up being a 1, or that I thought it was going to be a 1 and it ended up being a 10 as well. But then there's also the importance of listening to what is real, because they might be discussing reality and we think they're only talking about their perception. So there might be it's important for us when we're guiding people, coaching people, doing hypnosis with people, whatever it is we're doing, to actually figure out, is this somebody who has actually stepped on the mountain and tried? Is this somebody who has cuts and scrapes and blood all over themselves because they just keep trying to climb up that mountain they can't get up? Or is this somebody who just looking at that mountain and saying it looks scary and I can't put my foot on that mountain? What you were saying about it's individual to the person. For instance, I was thinking about a time I was asked to talk in church, scale of 1 to 10. And they said, oh, you need to talk to church. Oh, and by the way, it's going to be a week that we're going to get I think it was like 16 of the local churches together for a big meeting. That registered as maybe a 0.1 on my scale. And then they said, oh, guess what? It's also the week after September 11th. We decided to Zoom some people. It wasn't Zoom. Zoom didn't exist back then, but hey, we're on video feed to a bunch of other people, and a bunch of people that don't normally come to church are coming to church because it's the week after September 11th. That put it up to a 0.5. That would probably terrify most people. And yet I look at it and if I'm told, hey, in college, I want you to break out into groups of 3 to do an assignment, breaking out into groups of 3 is a 9 out of 10 for me. And I've had cases where somebody thought I was terrified because it was public speaking. Public speaking doesn't faze me. It's something else. And it's that important of how hard it is to listen and find out what really is the mountain they're describing. And is this a mountain that they're on or a mountain that they're avoiding?
Super cool insights. Thank you for sharing that. Anybody else?
I love that Holly brings so many different pieces. She hears things in such an amazing way. I had tunnel vision when you were talking about the mountain, and just we call them false peaks. When you think you're at the top and nope, you still got more ups to go. That we usually call them false peaks. It's so funny because it's so damn true. But once you get up there, the view is spectacular. And your mountain, I feel like once you get to the top, then you realize you want to go get to the top of another one and another one and another one. And it just keeps going. And it's not just, I used to think it would just be, and then you'd be there. And it's thankfully not like that. But at the same time, then it's also like, okay, we have another one. All right, how are we going to navigate around this one, over that one, under it, over it, whatever way you can get through it. But I liked how you put it into perspective of, did I perceive it to be as big? I thought that was an amazing question. And I also wrote down, it's just a thought, as in how you perceive it. Is it this big gargantuan thing, or is this just a thought? And you can then shrink it down and step right over it. Great topic.
Well, and thanks for sharing that. Another thing that came to mind was sometimes we think we're the only one in the entire evolution of the human species on this planet who has ever had to go through what I'm going through. There might have been somebody else who got something like close, but they haven't gone through what I'm going through. And it's right on some levels, and it falls short on others. Yes, they haven't gone through your views, your understandings with the lessons and knowledge and experiences that you have that have shaped your view of what the issue is. But people have gone through the same thing with their experiences, views, and issues. And if they're similar enough, they can be similar enough to let you know that, did they make it? Did one person make it? Then why not two? Well, if two people made it, then why not four? If it's the breakup from your very first school crush in high school, trillions of people have survived it. Chances are you'll be okay. And so again, like Holly pointed out, when we're helping clients and friends through these things, listening is key. And not putting our values and criteria onto how they should react. Helping them to analyze, asking questions, digging down, learning the trifecta, learning how to elicit values and criteria. Why is that important to you? Why do you feel that? What's worst case scenario? I love asking that one on people that are having these massive anxiety attacks and stuff like that. I'm like, well, what's the worst case scenario? Well, this could happen. Okay, you're right. This could happen. When that happens, what's the worst case scenario on that? Elijah.
Yeah, once you speak it out loud, it's never as bad as what you were thinking. Once you write it down, it's never as bad as when you spoke it. And once you go through it, it's never as bad as how you imagined at any point.
Yeah, that's, you're right. Thank you for that, because the look on people's faces just by simply asking that repeatedly, and when it gets to the point where they're like, well, and I went, okay, so you haven't died yet. I don't know if that would be the worst case scenario. I mean, I'm thinking that's pretty final, but yes, Elijah.
Everybody wants to go to heaven, but nobody wants to die.
Yes. Yeah, right? And the other thing that I like to challenge people with when they are perceiving their mountain, oftentimes they build the mountain that they know that they can climb easily. Like how much money do you want to make? What's your income set at? And it always cracks me up because they'll put something that, well, that's like what, 10% over what you're making right now. That's your big goal. That's your mountain. Well, that would be nice. I'm like, what would happen if you decided to make your mountain 10 times that? Oh, well, that's scary. I went, good. Because if it doesn't scare you, Why would you put in work? You're just like, I can, one of these days I can get up and I can take 3 steps and I can be there. But if you build it big enough, there'll be the reward that you can also build at the top of that mountain, whether it be the view, the accomplishment, who you become by reaching that goal, who you can help along the way, who can you inspire. Once you've reached that and figured out what ways work and what ways don't, what knowledge can you share with others to make sure that they don't fall off a cliff trying to reach the same peak? That's the best part about surrounding yourself with people who have climbed mountains that you're like, oh, I could never do that. They're super people. Yes, Lenore.
So, for those of you who don't know, anytime I work with coaches, I record every single one of my sessions. And there are times where I will go back and I will look at sessions that I recorded in 2020 and 2021. And it's so funny. Get out of my brain, TJ. I literally wrote this down earlier for my notes for tonight, because I personally think anytime that you work with somebody and you're the one who's the client, to record yourself, even to record yourself if you're the one leading, because you get to look back at your skills, but to record yourself for when you go back and you think, oh my God, I don't even remember I had that limiting belief. It's so far out of my realm of understanding at this point. And even in some of them, I'm asking questions that I definitely know the answers to now. And I can see that I have much more confidence, but looking back, I could see that mountain was massive. And it's just like, holy crap. So,
yeah. Right?
cool. Yeah.
Here's another one. When you were in Switzerland and you were out hiking,
Mm-hmm.
when you got to those vistas and those outlooks and things, and all of a sudden you look back to where you started the day,
Yeah.
how many times were you like, there is where we started?
It is shocking, because then you point out and you think like, oh my God, I can't believe I was over there even yesterday or over there even 8 hours ago. It's shocking. I do think there is a perception, because eventually you will get to the top. It feels like forever and it's foggy and you can't see, but eventually you'll get there. Whereas sometimes I'll think with the goals that I have, I don't have, maybe that's what it is. I don't have a concrete, like, yeah, I'll get there. I know for sure I will get there, as much as I hope to get there. I hope to get there. And I think that's the difference. And I like, you're all smiling, realizing, go, all right, that's your problem. But it's a very different experience. But even so, this past weekend, I used to bake like in 2016 and 2015, and I would listen to these videos on YouTube and I would think, I want to be able to do that. I want to be able to have this knowledge. I want to be able to share this knowledge. And then this weekend I was able to share and realize I remember that thought repeatedly and vividly. So it was a very, very pivotal weekend, very, very awesome weekend, but very, very pivotal to remember that and then see this.
And I'm smiling because of one word that got
Bananas. I don't even know what I said. Like, Elijah, what did I say?
I used to say, I hope I can get there. I hope I can, I hope.
Okay.
And I like how Dr. David always likes to throw out there, hope is the bastard son of try. One of the best things we learn in manifesting is you don't go for the little tiny goals. You go for what you actually believe that you want. You don't have to know how you're going to get there. You focus on the feeling that you're going to have when you get it. And then you're like, I'm not hoping I'll get it. I've already gotten it. This is how I'm going to feel as soon as I have it in my hands. I already have it. It's just not here yet. It's on its way.
Yeah. There was, I don't know if you guys have heard of this hypnotist, and I believe she's a hypnotherapist also. Her name is Dr. Kweetai Neal. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of her work. I got to meet her this weekend, and she had 2 talks. And one of the things that she said in her talk was, there's no more hope. No hope. We're done with hope. And it was just, it's a really good reminder. And because I then thought of the quote by Dr. David of hope is the bastard son of try.
Yep, I've called many people out on that. And I think there's a difference between the concept of losing hope and hoping I might get something. I've seen people who have had hope destroyed, taken away from them, where they've lost hope. That to me is an entirely different. That's future pacing shattered in not quite worst case scenario, but bad enough to where you're just like, I can't see anything decent ahead of me. All hope is gone. That's the dark abyss. The only cool thing about that is when they come out and they've learned lessons, they get these funky little marks. These right here.
Right, just a quick follow-up to that. When you do come up with somebody who's having that experience, how do you usually respond to that?
My favorite is to do the date and time protocol and let them know that even if it happened 10 minutes ago, we're able to have a conversation right now. You have survived. There's nothing from your past, even 10 minutes ago, that you haven't survived. And so if you've made it this far, all you have to do is take the next step. You don't have to see the mountain peak anymore. You don't have to, none of the above. Just take the next step and breathe. And it's okay to walk at your pace right now. If you need to sit down and breathe for a little bit, do that. But whatever you do, don't lay down and quit. Tomorrow's an entirely new day. And that I'm going to lead right into, because I've got 16 minutes to do 2 more. And this one will tie in a little bit to the golden rule. Who knows the golden rule? We've all been taught the golden rule. What is the golden rule? Anybody? Yes.
Say please and thank you.
That's the silver rule. We're getting closer. No, I think that's paper. Paper? The golden rule.
Is that the rule that leads to the gold?
Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. That's the original one.
Do unto
I want
others.
them to say please and thank you too.
Do unto others as you would have done unto you. Which, I ain't gonna lie, sometimes can be a little challenging. Because some people just need a good right on the forehead every now and then. I know, even I've needed a few. Even though I was a perfect child. Stop laughing, Mom. I love you. And I'm so sorry. At the end of this week and all, pray for my mother, for all that she's gone through to get me here. But the other part about the golden rule, what if the others is your future you and your past you? Do unto others as you would have done unto you. Sometimes we are our hardest critic. We will say things to ourselves, about ourselves, in our heads and out loud, that we would never let people say to us or about our best friends. And yet, who's the one person that we have to live with our entire life, everywhere we go, 24/7, the whole time? Us. And a lot of us weren't taught at a young age that the golden rule applies to us as well. Don't lie to people or yourself. Don't talk bad about other people or yourself. Do not judge lest thee be judged. How much judging have we put upon ourselves? Ooh. I know. I just did a photo shoot last weekend. And I've been going through my work. And though it's been a while since I've done a professional shoot with a professional model, there are some shots out of that session that I'm proud of. And yet I found myself going through and seeing all the lighting flaws and the posing flaws and the background flaws and this flaw and that flaw and should have done this, could have, should have, would have, this, that, and shut it off. Until I had to remind myself I wasn't looking for 300 perfect shots. And I haven't been shooting for 15 years. So then I had to go back through them, remembering the golden rule. Yeah, not too bad for a pro-am. And I'm going to put in the last one real quick. Seeing yourself in others. with this one, seeing yourself in others, it came out of, a lot of these topics come out of sessions with my clients. This one's no different. And seeing yourself in others is along the line of always be testing. ABT, 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 always be testing, always be testing. Especially those that are in the wait to date protocol and they're trying to figure out what they want in their partner and in their tribe. And I have my clients now do 3 different journals. One for their perfect partner, one for their perfect tribe, one for their perfect streams, with an S, of income. But with the testing, seeing yourself in others, I also have them pay attention to what they like and what they don't like in people as they witness humans in their natural environment. And when I have them tell me some of the things that bug them about people out in their natural environment, it's amazing how many times it's something inside of them. That mirror got held up, and whether they've moved past it, whether they're the same today or not, at some point in time in their life, that part of that was in them somewhere. And I think that's why they notice it so much and why it bothers them so much. And I wanted to bring this up because I'm not immune to it. I'm still human. There are
I don't
things.
believe it.
What's that? Yeah. Tried being a robot once, but man, boring. And I was afraid somebody else would take over the controlling, and who knows what could happen then.
Might sound like an odd question, but if you're a robot, how would you know if something was boring or not?
Exactly. I still had too much of my human programming left on the hard drive, and I went, yeah, these zeros and ones are too predictable. So that gives us 7 minis to reflect on tonight's topics. Anybody got any other ahas, epiphanies, questions that you'd like to throw in on that mix? Lenora?
I'm always curious as to, I often think people are mirrors and windows. And if you're getting triggered by somebody and they're just, is it necessarily that they're a mirror, or is that something that you already know that you don't like? For example, really narcissistic, pushy people who are shoving their opinion on you. I don't necessarily think that's a mirror because I'm very careful to not go around doing that. So how would you characterize that?
What popped into my head first with that is a mirror of something that happened in your past.
Okay.
Whether it was parentals or young tribe back then, because we know children are so nice. Fran, got your hand up.
Yeah, this is jumping back a couple of topics ago when I wasn't able to chip in and put my 2 bobs worth in, but you were talking about loss and future vision. Now, one of the things that I've observed a couple of times is when people have had a life event happen and they've lost their sense of identity and their future vision. And that's, a bit of a double whammy. So can I ask for the wisdom of the group for, and TJ of, what's your cut on that? What do you do when people, the rug's been pulled out from under them by circumstances and they've lost their identity? It happens sometimes with, footballers that have been caught doing something bad and they've been thrown out and they've lost all their future, they've lost their income, they've lost their identity and sense of self. What then? You have a part of having to reinvent or help the person reinvent themselves. Any wisdoms, please?
The one word that you said is the biggest: reinvent. Because even dealing with veterans, military people who, they, major injuries, or people that have been in major accidents. Again, one person's 3 is another person's 10, one person's 10 is another 3. And if they're going through their perceived 10, especially in things like that, I think the worst thing we can say is, well, it'll be okay. I think you have to go in and start giving them questions to help them come up with options. That's why I was so happy when I finally learned the concept of always at least 3 solutions to every event, situation, or problem that may occur. And so even when I'm seeing people, like we had that major car crash in front of our house out on the road, I did 2 things immediately. First thing I did was, the worst is over, you've survived. Second was, what's going to change in your life? What are you going to do about it tomorrow? How are you going to change after this event?
And what about time in this environment? Because the person can't see their future.
Yep.
So how do you handle time for them?
Again, if people won't typically take what you tell them for answers, they'll accept what they conclude. And so if you can help walk them through picking out potential conclusions, even if they're just small steps, their mind will accept those quicker, and you can build off of that in a new direction. Holly's got her hand up.
I feel almost hypocritical responding to this one, but there are 2 things that kind of popped into my head. Both of these come from the Matthew Hussey retreat, and I'm only going to kind of do high level stuff of it. But there's 2 things. One is this idea that we all have identities, and this is kind of a preemptive thing before it happens to us. But he talks about having your identity square and how much of each thing is part of your identity. And where we really get in trouble is when we have 1 or 2 big things that we take all of our identity from. Then it's possible when they leave, we don't have as many things around it to help support. So one of the things is making sure that you have other areas, that you have a more balanced life. So it's not just your career, it's not just your family, make sure you have friendships, make sure you have hobbies. So making sure you have a more balanced identity in lots of places, so that if a couple are ripped out, you still have other places you can turn. And then the other thing he talks about if you lose something that's really important to you, he does this exercise. It's a combination of chunking up and chunking down. And so let's say somebody is a dancer and they are in an accident, they lose their legs or something. So what you do is you just say, okay, go back to when you were a dancer. What were you getting out of it? And just keep going up to higher and higher level things. And, maybe it's a sense of freedom, a sense of grace, whatever it is, a sense of accomplishment, mastery, whatever it is. Then what you do is you go through and you brainstorm, what are other things that would give me a sense of mastery? What are other things that would make me feel graceful? And obviously there might be other things on that list that you also can't do without legs. But if you brainstorm long enough, you're going to come up with options that are still available to you in your new situation, where you could still get the end result, even though the way you're getting there is a different activity.
Yes.
Wonderful, wonderful.
And again, I like the approach that Holly brought up, because again, you're not telling them, well, here's what you could do. Instead, you're drilling down to values and criteria, and identity change, especially people that get married, have kids, and all the above. There's a lot of identity change going on there. You're born, mom and dad are God. You get a little bit older, you realize mom and dad aren't God, you're God. Then you get a little bit older, and then you realize, oh my gosh, I'm not God either. And then you finally get through the teens, if you survive and your parents haven't killed you like they wanted to a couple times. And then you graduate, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, wait, I'm an adult. Identity change. Nobody cares about me. I gotta pay for stuff. And then you meet that special somebody. Oh, I'm not single anymore. And then you break up, and then you're single again. And then you find somebody else, and then you're single again. Identity change. Then you finally meet somebody, and oh, that's the one. You get married. Identity change. Now you're Mr. or Mrs. Or in this stage, whatever. And then you have kids, and now you identity change in your rental units. And you're trying to keep little humans alive long enough to go on and have their own fun identity challenges. And then eventually, if you're lucky, they live long enough and they hop the nest. Now you're empty nesters. Identity change. Or you get a divorce. Now you're no longer. And so we've got these identity changes going along, happening constantly. But a lot of people haven't looked at it that way. And when you point out to them, how many identity changes have you already survived? How many have you already gone through? And you point these out, and they're like, whoa, okay. Now this is a bigger one. You've survived them all. And like Holly pointed out, you can drill down to values and criteria. What's important to you about? How will you know when you get it? What other things are there? And you allow them to cast optional visions and then figure out ways to support them, whether it be through ego or understanding, all the above, limiting beliefs, so that you can get them to a point where they can start seeing the new track, the new vision, the new mountain peak. Because obviously when they're going through that, there's typically quite a bit of fog. And Lenora can tell you what it's like hiking up a mountain when the fog sets in, right? And you're like,
Very much so.
now
It's
where
fun.
am I going?
Well, it's funny you mentioned it last week too, because there are times where I literally forget that it's just a fog. And it feels more like a black hole, but then you can just shift your attention and go, okay, well, what if this is just a fog? What if this is the fog lifting? What might that feel like? What might that look like?
And there might be times where it's foggy at night and your flashlight does nothing. I grew up in Minnesota then, you know, and sometimes you'll be driving and a blizzard kicks in with what we call a whiteout. You literally, the best thing that you can do is hopefully find the edge of the road in case some other idiot stick doesn't realize that you can't see anything. It's literally everything outside of your bubble is white. There is no vision other than inside the cab of the vehicle. And that to me is almost a reference for these people when they've hit those areas so hard. You don't know what direction you're going in. You don't know what's going on outside. You just know that the outside is hostile right now. And all you have is the cab of the car, cab of the vehicle. And again, you hope like hell that this is the worst that's going to happen. And you can sit there and spend the rest of the time focused on worst case scenario. There's going to be a truck driver that just has to get going through and he's doing 50 miles an hour and he's going to rear end me and we're all going to die. Or you can simply allow them to know that this has been going on since the dawn of blizzards. And unless there was the sun quit, which at that point, it ain't going to matter because we're all going to be gone in a couple more minutes. But if the sun hasn't quit, when the storm quits, you'll be able to evaluate how bad are you buried in the possible snow. And I've had it where I've had to sit there for all over 2 hours. And finally, the storm quit. And you open the door, and if you're lucky, the wind blew enough to where it blew the road clear. Or if not, you just realize that you have to make yourself visible enough so when the snowplow comes, they know that you're in the snow and they can open up the way to get you back home.
TJ, what happens to your sense of time if you're stuck in that sort of an environment? Can you tell me about that? I think
It'll come down to, a lot of it will come down to, I think, upbringing. Growing up in that environment is much different than if this had been the very first time. Like, let's say you grew up in San Diego, where they have no weather. I know, I lived there for 15 years. If you move to Minnesota and happen to be driving on your first whiteout blizzard, I'm pretty sure it's going to feel like you are locked in that car for at least 10 years. And if you grew up there, you're like, All right, anybody bring a deck of cards? You know, how much juice do I have left on my phone now? But this, you know, when I was driving, when I first was driving, yeah, yes, I'm old enough. We had no cell phones. Our phone was connected to the wall with a really long cord. Didn't get to take that in the car. And yes, Nancy, I know Nancy's also from Minnesota. You lose all sense of direction. Absolutely, because all you know is I was driving down the road. The road, as far as I know, was straight. And I kept my steering wheel like this, but I knew that I was hopefully in my lane, and hopefully I've got a quarter or a half a car over that I can move over to get as far off the road without falling into the ditch. And I parked. And after that point, if you forgot where you were, or if you were out on the back road somewhere coming home from somebody's house, you literally can lose all direction. You have no idea which way is north, south, east, west until you can actually see again. And even then, hopefully, the sun is not obscured by the clouds. And so a lot of it will come down to how did your parents react in that situation? My dad, loved him dearly. Papa would have been like, we're gonna make it home, you know, and we're like, we can't see. Well, I can feel the road. Until you can't feel the road anymore. That's when he's like, this fucking blizzard. All right. 99 bottles, a bear on the wall. And no, don't even. But you do what you have to do in those positions. And like I say, for somebody who didn't have any experience, reference, or the above, those are the ones that I think are going to be the most dependent on how their parents reacted in situations like that. If their parents taught them to totally lose it, worst case scenario, we're all going to die, some of them did.
So what do you do? How do you advise people that have lost all their personal terms of reference? I mean, physically losing all your terms of reference in a whiteout must be absolutely terrifying, I guess, again, depending on your upbringing. But, you know, people lose all their terms of reference in life when there's been a major life event. How do you find them back again? What do you do?
I wish I had an easy answer. A lot of it's going to depend on the person themselves. I've been through a few things, and those that know me well, you know, I ended up in San Diego sleeping in a garage on a mattress on the floor, after having a beautiful photography studio on 20 acres in paradise. And for me, it was like, well, that sucks. And I went into survival mode. And yet I know some other people who have gotten a demotion, still had all their stuff, and that was their 10. I know some people that have gone through a divorce, and that was their 10. Luckily, I don't know that I've gone through a 10. I don't want to even challenge the universe with after some of the stuff that I've made it through. But I think you have to look at the person and find whatever answer you can to, or whatever questions you can ask them, to let them search inside of themselves to find that one little answer and build off of that. Anybody else, please? Lenora.
I think also the support that that person has around them at that time, depending on even if it's I hired a coach and I hired somebody else, or I have a good friend and I have a coach, it's something else, and to not pinpoint it on one person, like you need to save me. It's we're here to help support you, to bring you up, and we will do as much as we can to carry you as far as we can, but to not do it for you and take their power away, almost like you're the savior. They're their own savior. You're there to support them in that walk.
I'm so glad you brought that up. The difference between enabling and helping. I've seen so many people that have been enabled through situations like that. And basically all it did was made the journey longer. It didn't help improve it, it just made it longer. And I think that's where you have to, sometimes there has to be some tough love. Sometimes it has to be, that's why tribe is so important. Community is so important. That's why a lot of people that are very active in a church will rebound through these things better than the loners. People that move into a brand new area that don't know anybody and get hit hard with a situation, I think suffer more than those that go through the exact same thing in their hometown where they grew up. So it comes back to the individual and the situation. Anybody else got anything to add to that, share with that? Ash, no?
I guess Holly's comments are totally valid in this perspective as well, about your sense of identity and your balance in life. And so that if you lose part of it, you lose all your terms of reference in one area, that you've still got your internal resources or other resources that you can lean on while you rebuild the other parts.
And I think part of what else is letting them realize what they still have, even if at the very minimum it's the ability to speak. When we're in the whiteouts like that in the vehicle, those that have been properly trained, that grew up in that area, first thing they learn, how much gas do you have? How much drifting is happening on the car? Make sure that your exhaust pipe is clear. Run your vehicle as little as possible to keep the cabin warm enough to survive. Not comfy, enough to survive. You don't know how long you're going to be here. Don't leave the car. And you learn these survival things for worst case scenario, But that's not actually worst case scenario, is it? Because you still have the car. Going off the road, getting tossed out of the car in a whiteout blizzard, that takes it to a whole new level because you can't even find the car. So again, we look at our clients. Are you still breathing? How are you taking it day by day? If breathing is the biggest accomplishment right now, then we're going to celebrate each breath. If you've got food, if you're able to feed yourself, if that's the next biggest accomplishment, we're going to celebrate that. When we get to the point where now we can start asking questions about what can we do, what are 3 options that we can come up with to make tomorrow better. And I like making them, I literally will make them come up with 3. Even if they're not that great, they realize that there's at least some options. Lenora.
I was gonna say the similar thing when they're that low, to offer support and to also offer guidance. So it's not so much pacing and leading, but also add this in, add that in, because they can get lost in the silence of their own thoughts and by themselves.
Yep.
So get it. It's very, it's a whole approach. It's what are you doing mentally? What are you doing physically? How are you sleeping? What are you doing nutritionally? And to raise your level as much as you can to help keep it going. Very specifically, I for almost anybody, I tell them watch comedies. Just keep comedies on in the background and keep allowing yourself to laugh as much as possible, or to get outside in the sunshine and to really go out for a walk, breathe the different air versus staying in your house, because getting that movement will also help everything energetically. Getting better nutrition compared to, a sleeve of Oreos or something, that will all help. And it feels like micro incremental movements, but they're movements still, and it's movement in the right direction.
Awesome input. And I just had a squirrel drop by with another approach that I like to use is ask them what would they give for advice to somebody else in the exact same position. Oftentimes we can come up with advice for other people much easier than we can take our own or come up with our own. Yes, Savo put in and break the state first so that you can get in, even if it's just a little flashlight inside the darkness, so they can see something different. And a little something that I saw on Instagram with Vin on is the phrase yes and. And as they're describing what they're going through, yes, and, so they can break their internal dialogue and start talking about things that can potentially work.
Yes, and that's really powerful.
Yes, and.
Yes, and.
Lenore.
It's amazing how little words, or at least what I consider to be little words, really completely change your perspective. So yes, and the word might, so far, these are really incremental movements, or small, I don't even know the word for it, but they explode the thought process completely. And being able to hear somebody's words and then modify them ever so slightly and adding in so far, or adding in what might it be? Possibly, what are 3 possibilities? Giving them that thought flexibility truly helps people come out of a very limited area. And even if they say, I don't know, if you did know, what might you come up with? Or shifting the perspective, who might you turn to? What might you say? It's again guiding them in such a way that they're still client-based. They're still coming back to themselves and giving themselves those answers.
So might in fact be a mighty word.
It might
Finally,
be,
indeed.
especially if you might be able to use it in the proper context.
How might one do that?
Might depend on who you're with.
What might it look like if one did that, Elijah?
Might look like exactly what you're imagining now. And it might not.
All the mighty might of vocabulary.
And ambiguity.
Yes.
It's one of my favorite things of all time.
What's that?
It's one of my favorite things of all time. Scope ambiguity.
Specific vagueness. And
If only I was good at it.
well, someday you might be.
Yeah, maybe. Hopefully. Got to keep practicing, you know. Got to keep practicing. I can hear it when other people say something that's ambiguous, but I can't always do it on purpose. Do you know what I mean? Because sometimes those
Driver and the
things that
passenger.
can make sense don't. Right? No, things that cannot make sense will when they shouldn't.
Practice, practice, practice.
I can add 2 more words that help clients quite a bit, and myself. Starting with, one time I was doing this class with one of the teachers of it was I think Michael Carroll with John Grinder, and he had us do this exercise up until now. So whatever limiting belief we had, it was that, and up until now I had these problems, and the other variant of that was yet. So it was like, up until I'm having issues with I was having issues with not being cautious while driving on the highway up until now. And then we would start with, the new sentence with but, and finish the new sentence. Or if there was a limiting belief, like, gosh, it's been a while. Okay, well, the one with yet, I can't be successful at, playing professional soccer yet. I can't do it yet. And then we would start the second one with a but, and then sort of like, because I feel like that what that gave me is the opportunity to make the future different than the past, not really linger in the past, and sort of every moment was opportunity to change. And no matter how many times I would use it, up until now, every time was a new opportunity for something.
Yes, and the more you use it, the more you'll be priming or teaching your brain the pattern. So the more in the beginning, you'll have to correct yourself and do those things on purpose. But just like driving a car, at some point you become unconsciously competent of it, and you start thinking that way normally. It becomes your default. And that's when you think, oh my God, I didn't even notice that I changed. But now my behaviors are different. My thinking patterns are different than what they used to be.
Right. Like, how many of you guys have worked on yourself in your dreams? I have. Have you ever done like work in terms of the stuff that we learn in like while you dream? Yeah. Eleonora is yawning. She's going through some strange work right now. Dreaming.
You mean like a lucid session?
Yeah, like lucid,
Yeah.
or maybe even
Yeah.
unconscious. Uh-huh.
Sorry, carry on.
Oh no, I was just gonna say like either lucid dreaming or like the full like unconscious dream that you just go wake up and you're like, oh, you know, like I was working on myself last night by introducing these new stuff that I learned in you know, coaching or therapeutic work.
If
Okay.
you set intention
No,
for that to
is
happen,
my
I think
answer.
it would be quite easy to create it. Do you have to set the intention, Savo, or does it just happen spontaneously?
It just happens all the time. Maybe because I have a lot of shit to work on and it just come up so much. I don't know.
Well, I think part of it is also intention. I remember when I bought my photography studio, and I literally was not really ready for it. I mean, talk about out of the frying pan right into the fire. And I know that I had 4 weeks of such intense, in-depth getting. I had the owner, John Yerka, who had a master's in photography from Brown's Institute, and his entire library of videotapes of stuff. At night, I would put in videotapes and everything, be sleeping and running these videotapes where I was in class while I was sleeping. I was in class while I was awake. And even if the videotape quit in the middle of the night, because some of them were 3-4 hours long, I was still, my brain was running on this stuff 24/7 for 3-4 months straight.
I quite often play myself my own recordings as I fall asleep. So I think playing a recording of setting the intention of doing sessions for yourself in sleep or in lucid dreams would also be a great plan. Thank you, Sabo. I'm going to try that one.
Well, and I also want to give kudos to you for playing you do amazing. Anybody watching, please get a hold of this young lady because she has some amazing recordings that she's put together. I've listened to some of them. I have some of them.
They're getting better.
Yes, they are getting better. The other thing is I would love to invite all of you to make your own recordings in your voice, because whose voice do you listen to the most? 24/7 for your entire life, your whole life. And the one thing that you have to get over that I find is very universal is the amount of people that hear their voice in a recording and just, I hate my own voice. And I have to remind them, it sounds foreign to you in a recording because you don't hear your voice inside your ears when you're talking. You hear it through your skull up into your ears. And it'll be completely different. And it's the only voice that you don't hear hardly at all. So it's a
Well,
brand new voice.
one of the only voices.
Yeah, other than the fact that your brain is going, I know who that is. It's an imposter. That sounds terrible. Ah!
Then you can experience your own hypnotic voice
Exactly.
in a recording, and that's really cool. but my daughters sometimes have a challenge listening to my hypnotic voice because it's not me, not really me.
Mm.
And we addressed that early in the deal tonight. Is friends and family are going to be the hardest ones on you when you're becoming that new person.
It's like when little children, when you read them a story, you've got to have the right voice for the characters. If you do the voice wrong, the whole thing is uncomfortable, and children are very picky about that. So that's what they're experiencing, because that's what they've always known. And when it changes, it takes a little adjustment.
But the best part is, if the kids have no reference, you get to set the reference. That's the cool part. When people have no reference, that's the best part about travel. You're meeting people who have zero reference on how you, quote unquote, should be, on how you should be acting, how you should talk, which means that when you're in that environment, it is the perfect time for you to experiment with new potential upgrades. Time to do the upgrade. Yes. If
Yeah,
you
I'm kind
always,
of curious.
what's
Sorry, I
that?
thought you were done. Sorry, I thought you were done. Carry on.
Oh no, go ahead.
Just the pause was long.
Yeah.
I was going to say, I'm kind of curious to maybe record something in this voice now that I'm kind of losing my voice. And perhaps it'll be different from my normal voice.
Yes.
It'll be interesting. I can vouch for, and I can validate the whole listening to your own suggestions thing. The self-hypnosis or the auto-suggestion or whatever you want to call it is very, very good. It's very, very strong. Very strong indeed. You don't even need to go as far as doing the whole binaural beat thing and all that. Just listen to it. Just let it play, you know. And I found, so I'm one of these people who, you know, call me crazy, but I'm one of these people who talks to myself, right? And often I have seen people sort of looking at me like, who's he talking to? Do you know what I mean? And I'm having a full-blown conversation with myself, but really it's with someone else, but it's myself. Do you know what I mean? Being the someone else as well, right? And well, I do that especially in the shower. Okay, this is something you don't necessarily know about me, but I have conversations with other people who are also being played by another part of myself in the shower, and they go really deep, and I get really therapeutic, and it becomes quite philosophical, and do you know what I mean? All that stuff. I find that when I am having one of these moments that I just press record on my phone, and I don't necessarily know if it's going to be useful or not, but some of them have turned out to be really useful, right? Some of them, I look back at them and I'm like, huh, maybe I could cut that one sentence and put it in to a recording of me doing a session for myself, and it would just be a really good sort of, you know, like you can, you know, like with Audacity and stuff, you can like have the main thing, and then you could have one bit in the background where it whispers something on the right side or whispers something on the left side, you know, and it could just be that one sentence that was from a different recording. And it's really, it's fascinating, and it works very, very, very well. Definitely something that I recommend playing with. You know,
That's a great idea.
So we did one, like I was in we was in the class a couple of weeks ago, and we did the shuffling of people's words, right? So people would tell you the problem, and then you would write down what they said word for word, and then you would kind of say to them, repeat after me, and you would mix up their words. And so often you would get the other person to laugh, even though what they were describing was a problem, but because their words were all mixed up, right? It sounds weird. So one of the things when I describe my problem, anyway, one of the people, they mixed up my words, and there was this little 3-word phrase that came out of it, which was shitty feels nothing. And every time she said shitty feels nothing, I laughed, right? Because in the actual problem, when I described the problem, I said, oh, and then I feel like I do nothing and it feels shitty. So when she was asking me to repeat after her, she edited it to shitty feels nothing. And for some reason, every time I hear it, shitty feels nothing, it makes me laugh. So I'm actually working on doing a recording now where I'm doing the recording for myself. And every now and again in the background, either on the left side or the right side, I'll have myself whisper like, shit, it feels nothing, right? And just see if that enhances my own self-hypnosis recording to myself a bit more. It's just interesting. It's definitely worth playing with. Definitely worth playing with.
Absolutely. That's awesome.
TJ, I would like to just briefly touch on what you mentioned earlier, how people who around us, like friends and family, are the ones that can give us the hardest time when we go through changes. So what I wanted to, one of the things that came to my mind is also for me, it's myself and my identity and my desire to stay in homeostasis. So it's almost like if I have this phone and sometime like in one point in my life, I had this problem that I had to, put on the side or just suppress or deny in a certain way. And I put that like in the dark room or maybe a closet. And so basically when I work on myself, a lot of, stuff and parts come up from the past. And then one of the things that happens to me is, so I look at things and then I bring things up on the light, right? And so more things I put in front of myself, more I can see and start to work on some changes when I talk about deeper changes, right? And so what I've noticed is when I have a lot of things in front of me, there's all the stuff that all of a sudden is like right there. There's a strong desire inside of me to stay in homeostasis and to stay in alignment with my identity. So, and I think it's it's a very strong force one of the things that I have been doing recently is just kind of dealing with one thing at a time. And I just noticed that as much as like people can also be a trigger to stay the same in homeostasis, I also myself do that.
Yep. That's part of the subconscious's main drive, is to make sure that we stay safe and we don't change, because change can be scary. And go ahead.
Sorry. And if you think of parts of yourself, the part that you want to change doesn't want to lose its life. It has a life drive all of its own. So sometimes you need to reassign that drive.
And then that's true. So that when it not just reassign, but sometimes also part of myself dies. And I've noticed that there is grief just as well as we have grief for other people. If I loved someone so much, and whether it's a relationship or a family, a person from my family who died, or people that I left when I came from Europe, there's a lot of great friends and family. And so there is grief. So what I'm actually grieving is a part of me, the part of my heart that they occupy. So I'm not really, and the same thing when I grieve comes as I let go of the part of myself. So there's all of that happening at the same time.
I think a lot of people don't give enough credence to the parts of yourselves. They are fighting for their lives. And so you have to honor that. And the death of that part if necessary, because that's, again, to do with your own overall safety and sense of survival. It's really primal. Anybody disagree with me?
I'm so glad that this got brought up. the grieving, even like with what we were talking about earlier, Fran, about identity, is allowing yourself to grieve and to bury that part that is now gone. And one of the things that helped me big time was when I realized that I had never grieved the loss of my property and my businesses in Minnesota when I lost everything. I went into survival mode, and it had never dawned on me to grieve what I'd lost. I was angry, I was bitter, I was in survival mode, I was doing things that I would normally never do because I wouldn't let it go.
Mm-hmm.
And finally, through a combination, I think it was everything: Tony Robbins, Wayne Dyer, Dr. David Snyder, all the above. Finally, it somewhere in there was a spark that, well, have you grieved? Have you, held, like, even if you have to have a funeral for those ideals, those things that you had, just to be able to move on.
Yep.
And it had never dawned on me. And when I did that, it was a change. It was a new chapter. It was the ability to close that chapter.
And the time it takes to grieve. We're so impatient with ourselves. Oh, I should be over that. And no, you actually need the time to grieve as long as you need to grieve. And maybe that's a time perhaps for time distortion play, but you need to honor that part and give it the time to heal, and be gentle with yourself, because we're so impatient with ourselves, especially when we're not performing. And if, some parts, when you've had a big change of identity, it can take years because you've lived with that part for so long and now it's no longer there.
TJ, okay, is there any chance that you could pause the recording for just a couple of minutes? I have a personal question.
I've got 3 recordings going on. Can we do it afterwards?
Actually, the thing is that I have a client coming up. At 6, I have a session, and something happened, and I'm not sure which way to take it with her, but I wanted to ask you guys for opinion.
You could
What I'll do is, what I can do, Savo, reach out to me on my phone, and I'll let we'll do a little breakout on the side while the rest of you guys talk about.
Yeah. Okay, thank you, brother.
You can put yourself and Savo in. Oh no, it wouldn't work because you're the one recording. Never mind. I was going to say you could put the 2 of you into a breakout room and then we can carry on, but it wouldn't work because the recording will follow wherever the host is, so it doesn't matter. Yeah. It was just kind of irrelevant. Yeah,
it's okay. We just reach out to me on my phone, and you guys can. What's another topic we can bring up while Savo and I step out quick?
I've got a follow-up from last week, and it will take a minute, so you guys can feel free to do what you need to do. So if you remember, we were talking about the fish and the monkeys, and how I believe that we all have times when we're monkeys, we all have time when we're fish, but that how do you respond when you're dealing with monkeys that don't want to see that you're a fish? And Savo said, well, what advice would you give yourself? Just kind of, reminder where we're at. So kind of, because I could come up with specific examples of what I'm thinking about, but I like to have principles and kind of decision trees of where to go. And I like to test that principle at the extremes. So I was thinking, first of all, at an extreme would be like, say I'm in a Nazi camp and somebody tells me climb that tree or I'm going to shoot you. The truth is, in that extreme scenario, I'm not going to convince them I'm not, I'm a fish, whatever. I can't climb the tree just because they have a gun at me. So the best thing to do would just be to accept who I am and just silently, at least my true choices are I could die with anxiety, or I could die with peace. And I think I'd rather have the peace. So then I kind of started thinking about some other scenarios. So let's say you have a situation where, because I was thinking, oh, maybe I could trust fish, but I can't trust monkeys. But I started thinking about, there are some monkeys that will listen to you and see that you're a fish. And there are some fish, and I know I'm taking this analogy as far as stretching it, but there are some fish that have lived with so many other monkeys that even though they can't climb the tree, they think that's the expectation you're supposed to have, and they'll still try to have that expectation of you, even though they're also a fish. So that's not a reliable thing to look at. But I was thinking, so whether it's a monkey or a fish, some are going to listen, some are not. I figured you have 3 categories, 3 ways they might respond to you, general categories. One is they're going to believe you, listen to you, and adapt. One is that they're just going to be, should we say, dismissive? They don't listen carefully, they don't believe whatever. And then the third category is you're going to have some people who are going to believe you, and they actually have bad intentions, and they're going to use that against you. They're going to say, oh, you are a fish, I can crush you so easily because I'm so much bigger than you, in the analogy. So my question is, I could see if it's somebody who will listen to you, it's only fair to tell them what's going on and give them a chance to listen. But if it's somebody who is going to be dismissive, they might hear it just as excuses. But even worse, if it's somebody who has bad intentions, they might use it to try to hurt you. So question 1 is there a way to distinguish who these people are before we share with them? And then question 2 is, if we are struggling to distinguish, is it better to just share with everybody, or is it better not to share until you've tested people? What strategies would each of you use in those if you don't know and you're trying to figure out who you could trust, who you can't trust? And I know that's a very esoteric, very analogy, but I think it gets the point across.
So, I mean, for me, okay, this is a cop-out answer, okay? So I'm not answering your question, I'm answering my question that I'm about to put in your mouth, if you like. Trust is not like, the whole thing about trust is like, either you trust someone or you don't, you know what I mean? And it's not like, oh, if you do this way, then I know I'll be able to trust you. Well, no, that's not trust, because then you already have your guarantee, right? So trust is one of those things that's instinctive. You either do or you don't. And I would say that, 19, or at least 95%, I was going to say 99, but at least 95% of people you come across, you probably shouldn't trust completely straight away, right? And, 90% of that 95%, you probably shouldn't completely trust even after a while. Yeah. So trust is one of those things that I think, like, either you do or you don't. And if you don't, there's nothing wrong with that. That people can build trust based on, like, oh, okay, I didn't know they were like this. I wasn't expecting this behavior from them. I noticed something. But if you start saying, like, okay, could you do things this way, that way I know you can trust, that's not real trust, is it? You're already asking for a guarantee. So I kind of wanted to throw that in the mix, if I could.
Well, I apologize, I missed a little bit of the conversation, but I think it's really important to be aware of what trust means to you and how much you care what people know about you. I mean, there are some things that you definitely don't want to share with some people, with anybody maybe. But if you reach a point where you really don't give a darn if they know or they don't know, then the trust is kind of out of the picture. It doesn't really matter. And so changing your internal relationship to how you feel about people knowing personal stuff about you. I'm a really private person and I shoot my mouth off here in this environment. And this is a very public environment. And there are some things that I would definitely only share with a few people. So I don't think that gives much of a response with how you tell trustworthy from non-trustworthy.
Lenore, got a hand up.
For me, especially, I'm going to assume that this is a work-related situation. And for me, I have learned that your work people or your work people, and even ones that transfer over, that somehow magically transfer over into your circle of friends, and you would consider one of your dear friends, can still stab you in the back, smiling and think nothing of it. And people that I would have absolutely considered incredibly close to me flipped on a dime. And it's one of those things. Sorry, my snap wasn't very good. It's one of those things where it's unfortunate. And trust me, I trusted this person, and it did not. There was no other red flag from before that other than, how do they act to other people? If they're talking about other people to you and to other people, they're probably doing it about you too. That's a big takeaway that I learned the very hard way.
And
I
some
just want
people
to say thank you,
know
TJ, so
that-
much.
that-
Thank you, guys. Have a session. Thank you, brother. I'll see you guys later next time. Have a great week.
And some people don't even know that they're betraying your trust. They don't realize it. That's another thing.
ABT, ABT, ABT. Always be testing, always be testing, always be testing. And the more you learn, the more you see, the more you see, the more you understand. I know I just jumped in on the back side of this, but what Lenora pointed out, when it's very easy for people to gossip about other people to you, don't think that you're immune from their conversations with others. And I've had to teach that to a couple of people the hard way. We don't have time for me to go into those stories, but it's amazing, especially as a bartender in a small town, the things you'll hear. But growing up with Grandma writing the gossip column for the local newspaper, you learn to keep your mouth about many things. And the amount of information that I've had people trust me with that I keep enclosed is a good karma thing. Yes, Elijah.
I tell people, I am not to be trusted.
Well,
Because I don't want to know your shit, man. I don't want to keep secrets.
the other thing I liked about that
when
was
I have nothing to, when you have like secrets to remember and stuff, there's a lot of pressure. You don't know, you gotta like be careful what you say and whatever. Like if I'm not trustworthy and you tell me nothing and I have nothing to remember, then I'm free, right?
yes, and your honesty in that statement is beautifully honest.
Right. Here's the thing. I will never do anything to intentionally harm you. But if I accidentally speak your secret to someone, don't get mad, because I told you already. Yeah? I am liable to say some shit sometimes.
This is all great stuff. I just know we have 2 minutes. So I just want to jump in real fast, kind of to make it very specific. Sometimes you have to trust somebody, like, so say you're in a job interview and you're going to take the. Is there a way that you could see if there's somebody who gossips or whatever in the interview itself? Because once I take this job, if they turn out not to be trustworthy, I can get out of that, but it might take me a good 6 months. And now I have to line up another job. And is there a quick way to weed people out? Or do you just have to take the 6 months, take the job and figure out who they really are and spend a year of your life changing to another job?
You could say something that's false and see if someone else finds out what the false thing that you said was. And you'll be like, oh my God, they gossip. But then it's one of those things like, if you say something false in the beginning of the interview, will you figure it out by the end of the interview? Probably not. It's very hard, and that's such a short time frame. It's very difficult, I think, to figure that out. It's the kind of thing that like you plant a seed and then it will come around at some point and then you'll figure it out. Do you know what I mean? I don't know if it like I'd like to say you can, but I'm not on that level. I really am. I think there are people that maybe David can, Maybe Fran can. There are some people I know who maybe like Bernie can. There are some energetic people in this world that can do some
Yeah,
thinking.
it's going
I
into
can't.
the energy stuff.
Personally, I can't. Maybe you want to talk to Bernie because he might actually know something about this stuff. Genuinely, Bernie might be able to tell you, oh, do you know what? Actually, there's a technique. But I personally, I don't think so. For me, it's the kind of thing that you would have to say, you'd have to plant something, and in a week or two, it will come back around, and that's how you would get your information. I
I
don't
think you're
think I could
moving
do
in,
an interview.
I think you're moving into energy, and I don't know whether, you know, people that aren't so used to using your energy sometimes find pendulums useful, but then again, you know, you still, it's not maybe 100% accurate, but feeling into the energy. You're good at energy, Holly, so use the energetic side of things, move into that field, and feel what they're like. And feel how far. I mean, a lot of people are trustworthy in certain aspects of their life or certain areas, but not in another. So again, you know, you might find somebody who's totally trustworthy in one area, but lets you down in another. And then that comes down to your responsibility of what you share and looking after yourself in that environment.
Linda.
You don't have to wait until you're in the interview. Do it ahead of time.
Yes, that was part of what I was going to say. And here's the other part. We all have access to tools that most people don't. We have Chinese facial reading. We have values and criteria elicitation. We have echo talk, which gets people talking. We have rapport building skills. We have the interview buster. We have all of these things that the rest of the world knows very little about. And for those of you that are watching from YouTube and watching the recording, if you have no idea what I was just talking about, reach out. Because it's there, it's real, if nothing else, it's worth learning just to have the knowledge. And unfortunately, as much as I could easily go into, we could turn this into a 4-day nonstop. And I know that Elijah has the energy, and I do as well when we start teaching. I always want to respect your time, and we are 3 minutes past the top of the second hour, which means that I don't have to. I get to. I get the privilege of thanking you guys once again for investing your precious, precious commodity, which is time, one thing that I cannot produce and give back to you. And for you to invest it here on this platform with all of us, sharing your thoughts, your ideas, even just your intentions and your presence means so much to me. For those of you out on YouTube land, love you, Mom. And for those of you watching the recording, thank you for that time. Please share this with others. Not for me to feel all glorious and stuff. There are people that need to hear these things. And that's our main goal, is to spread the knowledge, the intention, the abilities for the people that are out there that are hurting. And if you're one of them, or if you know somebody, have them reach out to any of us. And let them know they can join us on here. You don't even have to know how to spell NLP. I know Elijah loves it when I say that. Because we're here because we are how's Dr. David describe us? That's special kind of stupid, because we just like to help people, whatever it takes. And I'm so blessed to have you guys in my tribe, every single one of you. So thank you again. Looking forward to seeing your amazing smiling faces in 7 days for new topics, new ideas, new conversations, new energies, and all the above. Take care of yourself, go out in the world, make it a better place, be kind to people, and most of all, know that you are loved. Bye.
Cheers, TJ.
Thanks, Alicia.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Bye.